My name is Amanda, and at 34 years old, I finally achieved my dream of buying a $2 million home after years of hard work and sacrifice. As an executive at a leading tech company, I was beyond excited to show off my beautiful new place at my housewarming party. Family dynamics have always been complicated for me, but I never expected my perfect day would turn into a family showdown that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about setting boundaries with family. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Connecticut, where life seemed pretty normal until I turned 12. That was when my parents decided to get divorced. The split was messy and created immediate financial strain for our family. My mother Dorothy had always been a stay-at-home mom, and suddenly she was thrust into the workforce with limited skills and 2 daughters to support. My sister Bridget was 3 years older than me, and had always been our mother's favorite. It was never said explicitly, but the signs were obvious to anyone paying attention. Bridget looked more like our mother shared her interests, and had the same outgoing personality that made her the center of attention at family gatherings. I was quieter, more studious, and took after my father in both appearance and temperament. When the divorce happened, those dynamics intensified. My mother leaned heavily on Bridget for emotional support, treating her more like a friend than a daughter. Meanwhile, I threw myself into academics, seeing education as my ticket to independence. While Bridget was dating and partying through high school, I was earning straight A's and applying for every scholarship I could find. The hard work paid off when I received a full scholarship to a prestigious university to study business and computer science. My mother barely acknowledged the achievement, mentioning it only in passing to relatives, while spending hours on the phone discussing Bridget's latest boyfriend drama. I worked throughout college, taking on internships during the summer and part-time jobs during the school year to cover my living expenses. Meanwhile, Bridget dropped out of community college at 21 when she got pregnant with her first child, Zoe. Our mother was surprisingly supportive, converting our childhood home into a space for Bridget and her baby, talking endlessly about how being a grandmother was her greatest joy. I continued pushing forward with my education and career, determined to build something for myself. After graduating with honors, I landed an entry-level position at a growing tech company. The hours were long and the work was challenging, but I thrived in the environment. Over the next 10 years, I climbed the corporate ladder through a combination of technical skill, business acumen, and sheer determination. Each promotion came with more responsibility and better compensation, allowing me to build significant savings for the first time in my life. During those same 10 years, Bridget had 3 more children with 2 different fathers. Grace came 2 years after Zoe, then Lily, 3 years later, and finally, Harper just last year. Each new child seemed to coincide with a new financial crisis. And each time my mother would call me with the same refrain: "Your sister needs help, and family has to stick together." The pattern became painfully predictable. Bridget would make impulsive financial decisions, from leasing luxury cars she couldn't afford to moving into apartments beyond her budget. When the consequences inevitably caught up with her, our mother would contact me, explaining why it was my responsibility to bail Bridget out. Over the years, I paid her rent when she faced eviction-covered car repairs, when she needed transportation for the kids, and funded school expenses when she claimed she couldn't afford them. Each time I helped, I told myself it would be the last time. Each time I convinced myself I was doing it for my nieces, not for my sister who refused to learn from her mistakes. And each time my resentment grew a little deeper. 3 years ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I accepted a senior executive position that required relocating to another city, 4 hours away from my family. My mother acted as though I was abandoning them, while Bridget seemed genuinely panicked at the idea that her safety net would no longer be readily accessible. I assured them both I would visit regularly, but privately I welcomed the physical distance as a chance to establish some emotional boundaries as well. The move coincided with a significant salary increase and bonus structure that substantially boosted my net worth. For the first time, I began seriously considering buying a home rather than renting. I had always been careful with money, investing wisely, and living below my means. Now, approaching my mid-30s, I felt ready to put down roots and create the sanctuary I had always dreamed of. My house hunting journey lasted nearly a year. I viewed dozens of properties, but nothing felt quite right until my realtor called about a new listing that had just hit the market. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew this was the one. 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, a stunning kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances, a home office with built-in bookshelves and a backyard with a pool and patio, perfect for entertaining. At $2 million, it was at the top of my budget, but I could make it work. The house represented everything I had worked for all these years. Each room, each feature, each carefully designed space was a testament to my journey from that quiet, overlooked child to a successful woman who had built a life on her own terms. When I signed the closing documents, I felt a profound sense of achievement mixed with disbelief. This beautiful home was actually mine. I spent the next month making the space truly my own. I hired painters to transform the walls with a palette of soft blues and greens, invested in comfortable but elegant furniture, and carefully selected artwork that spoke to my aesthetic. Every decision was deliberate, creating an environment that felt both luxurious and welcoming, sophisticated, yet comfortable. Once everything was in place, I decided to host a housewarming party. I wanted to celebrate this milestone with friends and colleagues who had supported me throughout my career. After some consideration, I added my family to the guest list as well. Despite our complicated history, I hoped the occasion might represent a fresh start. Perhaps seeing my success firsthand would help them understand my boundaries going forward. I planned every detail meticulously. I hired a catering company known for their exquisite appetizers and cocktails, arranged for a bartender to serve drinks throughout the evening, and even brought in a florist to create stunning arrangements for each room. The guest list included 50 people, a mix of work associates, friends from various stages of life, and yes, my small family. The day before the party, I received a text from Bridget that sent a small shiver of apprehension down my spine. So excited to see your new place tomorrow. I have big news to share with everyone. Trust me, you will never forget this housewarming. I tried to dismiss my unease as paranoia born from years of difficult interactions. Surely even Bridget wouldn't try to hijack my housewarming party. I focused instead on the final preparations, determined to make the event perfect in every way. This was my moment, my celebration, my home. What could possibly go wrong? The morning of the party dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for an event that would flow between indoor and outdoor spaces. I woke up early, too excited to sleep in despite having been up late finalizing details. Walking through my house in the gentle morning light, I felt a surge of pride and contentment. Every surface gleamed, every room looked magazine-worthy, and the caterers would arrive in just a few hours to set up. I spent the morning arranging last-minute touches, lighting scented candles, adjusting flower arrangements, and testing the carefully curated playlist that would provide background music throughout the evening. By the time the catering team arrived at 3 in the afternoon, everything was ready. The party was scheduled to begin at 6, giving me plenty of time to shower, dress, and prepare myself mentally for hosting. The first guests arrived promptly at 6, a group of colleagues from work, who exclaimed appreciatively as they entered the grand foyer with its soaring ceiling and elegant chandelier. I gave them a quick tour, feeling a flutter of pleasure at their genuine admiration of my new home. "Amanda, this place is absolutely stunning," said Marcus, my department head. "That view from the back patio is worth every penny." "The kitchen is a chef's dream," Rachel added, running her hand along the marble countertop. "I cannot believe you found this place in this market." As more guests arrived, I settled into the role of gracious hostess, accepting housewarming gifts, introducing people who hadn't met before, and ensuring everyone had a drink in hand. The caterers circulated with trays of delicious appetizers, and the atmosphere quickly became festive and relaxed. My father arrived with his new wife Patricia, around 6:30. Our relationship had improved since the divorce, though we would never be especially close. He gave me an awkward hug and presented me with an expensive bottle of champagne. "Quite a place you have here, Amanda," he said, looking around with obvious approval. "You have done very well for yourself." "Thanks, Dad," I replied, feeling a small glow of satisfaction at his acknowledgement. "Let me show you around." As I guided them through the house, pointing out features and sharing my plans for various spaces, I could sense a genuine pride in my father's responses. Patricia, who had always been kind if somewhat distant, complimented my taste and asked thoughtful questions about my design choices. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to enjoy this rare experience of parental approval without complications. The caterers had outdone themselves with an impressive spread. Elegant platters of prosciutto-wrapped asparagus miniature crab cakes with lemon aioli, mushroom arancini, and Thai chicken skewers circulated continuously. The bartender created signature cocktails, named after rooms in the house, a touch my guests particularly enjoyed. The French doors leading to the back patio were open, allowing people to drift between the cool air conditioning inside and the pleasant evening breeze by the illuminated pool. Standing in my living room, watching my guests mingle and enjoy themselves in my beautiful new home, I felt a moment of pure accomplishment. This was what I had worked so hard for all these years, not just the house itself, but the life it represented. I had created this success through my own efforts, overcoming every obstacle, and proving to myself that I was capable of achieving my dreams. The moment of contentment shattered when I heard my mother's voice in the entryway. She had arrived alone much earlier than I had expected. I took a deep breath, fixed a smile on my face, and went to greet her. "Mother, welcome," I said, leaning in for the obligatory hug. "I am so glad you could make it." Dorothy gave me a quick, perfunctory embrace before her gaze swept critically around the foyer. "My goodness, Amanda. This is certainly excessive for one person, is it not? All this space for just you." Before I could respond, she brushed past me into the living room, her eyes taking inventory of every piece of furniture, every decoration, every sign of what she would undoubtedly consider unnecessary luxury. I followed behind, already feeling the familiar tension headache beginning to form. "Where are the spare bedrooms?" she asked abruptly, turning to face me. "And what is your guest policy? Do you have a schedule for when family can visit?" "I have 4 guest bedrooms," I replied carefully. "And I do not have a formal policy, but I would expect guests to arrange visits in advance, as most people do." My mother nodded absently, already turning away to examine a piece of artwork on the wall. I noticed her checking her watch, and then pulling out her phone. "Excuse me a moment. I need to make a quick call." I moved away to attend to other guests, but could not help overhearing snippets of her conversation. "Yes, it is perfect. Plenty of room. The kids will love it. Just wait until you see it." A cold knot of apprehension formed in my stomach. She was clearly talking to Bridget, and something in her tone set off warning bells. I tried to dismiss my concerns and focus on my other guests, but found my attention repeatedly drawn back to my mother, who was now wandering through the house with the air of someone taking inventory. Rachel, my closest colleague and friend, pulled me aside near the kitchen. "Your new place is amazing, Amanda, and I am really proud of you for including your family, despite everything you have told me. That could not have been an easy decision." I smiled gratefully. Rachel had heard many stories about my family dynamics over late-night work sessions and weekend brunches. "Thanks. I am trying to establish new patterns now that I have this physical distance. Clear boundaries, you know." Rachel squeezed my arm supportively. "Boundaries are good. Just remember what you always tell our team about not rewarding bad behavior with attention." Her words reminded me of previous family gatherings that had ended with me feeling used and unappreciated. The time Bridget had announced at my MBA graduation dinner that she was pregnant with her 3rd child, effectively redirecting all attention from my achievement. Or the Christmas, when my mother had spent the entire meal discussing how I needed to contribute to a fund for Bridget's new car, despite having just paid for emergency dental work for Grace the month before. My troubling thoughts were interrupted when I noticed my mother in one of the upstairs bedrooms. The door left ajar as she rearranged the decorative pillows on the bed and moved a small side table from one wall to another. "Mother, what are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light despite my growing concern. "This room gets the morning sun, does it not? It would be perfect for the girls. The bed is a queen, which is big enough for Lily and Harper to share for now. We could put a desk under the window for Zoe's schoolwork." "The girls. Mother, are you planning a visit with Bridget and the kids that you have not mentioned to me?" My mother waved her hand dismissively. "You will understand soon enough. Let us rejoin your party. When is Bridget supposed to arrive anyway? She should have been here by now." I felt increasingly uneasy as I escorted my mother back downstairs. Just then my phone vibrated with a text message from Bridget running late. "Save the announcement for when I get there." What announcement? The knot in my stomach tightened further, but I pushed my anxiety aside as best I could. This was my housewarming party, my special day to celebrate a major milestone. I would not allow my family's dynamics to overshadow that. For the next hour, I circulated among my guests, accepting congratulations and sharing anecdotes about the house hunting process and my plans for the property. Yet all the while I found myself distracted watching the door and checking my phone, dreading whatever my sister had planned. Several guests began asking about the rest of my family, having met my father and mother but noticing the absence of my sister. Each time I explained that she was running late, hoping my fixed smile concealed my growing apprehension. Inside, I was torn between family loyalty and the need to protect myself from what experience suggested would be another instance of having my boundaries trampled. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere remained festive, but I found it increasingly difficult to enjoy my own party. Each time the doorbell rang, I felt a spike of anxiety, wondering if this would be the moment when my sister arrived to deliver her mysterious announcement. At precisely 8:15, the front door burst open with dramatic flair. Bridget had arrived, and as always, she made sure her entrance commanded attention. Behind her trailed her 4 daughters, 14-year-old Zoe, 12-year-old Grace, 9-year-old Lily, and 4-year-old Harper. The girls spilled into my foyer with the chaotic energy of children who had been confined in a car too long. "We are here," Bridget announced unnecessarily, her voice carrying through the house and causing heads to turn. "Sorry, we are late. Traffic was absolutely insane." I moved quickly to greet them, noticing that, despite her claims of financial hardship, Bridget carried a designer purse that had to cost at least $1,000. She was dressed in a trendy outfit that looked new, and her hair had clearly been recently highlighted at an expensive salon. These details registered in my mind even as I leaned in to give her the expected hug. "Welcome," I said, trying to sound genuinely pleased. "Let me introduce you to everyone." The children had already scattered. Harper, the youngest, was running her sticky fingers along my white sofa, while Lily had made a beeline for the dessert table. Grace stood sullenly by the door, tapping on her phone, and only Zoe hung back near her mother, offering me a small apologetic smile. I made awkward introductions to those nearby watching, as my carefully cultivated professional image was juxtaposed against the chaos my sister brought with her. My colleagues regarded Bridget with polite interest, though I could see questions forming behind their eyes. My pristine home, which had looked like a design magazine spread just moments before, was rapidly transforming under the influence of my nieces. Before I could guide Bridget toward the food or engage her in controlled conversation, my mother appeared at my side, her face alight with anticipation. "Everyone, everyone," Dorothy called out, her voice cutting through the party chatter. "If I could have your attention, please. Bridget has a special announcement to make." The room gradually quieted as guests turned curiously toward my mother and sister. I stood frozen, a sense of impending doom washing over me, as Bridget stepped forward, beaming with excitement. "I have got amazing news," she declared, pausing dramatically to scan the room. "As of today, I have officially listed my house for sale because we are moving in with Amanda." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, no one seemed to know how to respond. Then hesitantly, a few people began to applaud, clearly confused, but assuming this must be a welcome development, since it was being announced so publicly. My mother stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Bridget's shoulders. "Is it not wonderful?" she gushed. "The girls need the space more than Amanda does alone. This beautiful house will finally be filled with family." The children, picking up on the cue, began to cheer. Harper clapped her hands and spun in circles, while Lily and Grace exchanged excited glances. Only Zoe remained subdued, watching my face with knowing eyes. I felt physically ill. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and I had to lock my knees to remain standing. My mind struggled to process what was happening. Moving in. My sister and her 4 children moving into my brand new home. The home I had worked so hard to afford, the sanctuary I had so carefully designed. Around me, guests were offering confused congratulations or awkwardly looking away. My colleague Marcus raised his eyebrows at me questioningly, while Rachel wore an expression of barely concealed outrage on my behalf. Before I could gather my thoughts enough to respond, Bridget continued her announcement. "It is just perfect timing. My lease is up at the end of the month, and Amanda has all these empty rooms going to waste. Plus, the school district here is so much better for the girls." I finally found my voice, though it came out quieter than I intended. "Wait, we have not discussed this." My mother immediately cut me off. "Family does not need to discuss helping each other. That is what family is for. Right, everyone?" More confused murmurs and nods from the guests, who were clearly unsure how to navigate this unexpected turn of events. Bridget was already moving toward the staircase, gesturing for her daughters to follow. "Come on, girls. Let us go pick out your bedrooms. Zoe, you will probably want the one with the window seat. Grace, there is a perfect room with space for your gymnastics trophies." I watched in stunned disbelief as my sister led a parade of guests upstairs to show off rooms she had never even seen before. My mother followed behind, already discussing color schemes and furniture arrangements, as though the decision had been made and agreed upon. Numbly, I followed the group up the stairs, arriving just in time to see Harper peeling stickers from her jacket and applying them to the frame of an expensive piece of artwork in the hallway. "Harper, no!" I exclaimed, moving quickly to intercept her. But the damage was already done. Cartoon character stickers now decorated the custom frame I had chosen just weeks ago. "Sorry," the 4-year-old said without sounding remotely apologetic. "I am making it prettier." In the guest bedroom that I had set up as a secondary office space, Grace was loudly complaining about the boring wall color. "Can we paint it purple, Mom? This beige is so dull." Lily had already opened the closet and was rearranging items I had stored there. "Is there room for my dollhouse? And can we get a dog now that we have a yard? I have always wanted a big dog." Zoe alone stood apart from the activity, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed. When our eyes met, she mouthed a silent sorry that only deepened my sense of betrayal. Even she had known about this plan before I did. Downstairs, I could hear guests making excuses to leave early. The festive atmosphere had been irreparably damaged by the unexpected family drama. I should have been downstairs, thanking people for coming, accepting their housewarming gifts, and cementing new friendships. Instead, I was watching helplessly as my home was being mentally subdivided and reassigned without my consent. In what had been designated as my home office, with its custom-built bookshelves and ergonomic workspace, my mother and Bridget were discussing necessary renovations to make the house more family-friendly. "This office can easily be converted to a playroom," my mother was saying. "The bookshelves can hold toys instead of all these workbooks, and we should look into child-proofing the pool area right away." "I was thinking the master bedroom might actually work better for me," Bridget added casually. "Since I need the attached bathroom for getting the girls ready in the morning, Amanda could take one of the other bedrooms." I stood in the doorway, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were not just planning to move in, they were planning to displace me in my own home. The final straw came when I overheard Bridget on her phone in the hallway. "Yes, Tuesday works. 9 in the morning. The address is 725 Oakwood Drive. Yes, that is right, the big house, with the circular driveway. When she hung up, I approached her struggling to maintain my composure. Who was that? Bridget smiled brightly. The movers, I have already scheduled them for Tuesday. I gave notice at my apartment yesterday, so we need to be out by the end of the week. Is that not exciting? The girls can start at their new school next Monday. I grabbed Bridget's arm perhaps more firmly than I intended, and pulled her into the kitchen away from the remaining guests and curious children. The catering staff discreetly moved to the far end of the space, sensing the tension. When exactly were you planning to ask me about this? I asked, keeping my voice low, but unable to disguise my anger. Bridget blinked at me with an expression of genuine confusion. Ask you? I knew you would say yes. You always help family. That is what you do. This is not helping with a car payment or school tuition, Bridget. This is my home that I bought. You cannot just announce you are moving in without even discussing it with me first. But it makes perfect sense, she insisted, her tone becoming defensive. You have this massive house all to yourself. We are crammed into that tiny apartment since Jeff left. The girls need space to grow. Before I could respond, my mother appeared at Bridget's side, presenting a united front, as she had done countless times before. What is the problem here? Why are you making a scene at your own party, Amanda? I am not making a scene, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. I am trying to understand why Bridget thinks she and her 4 children are moving into my house without ever having a conversation with me about it. My mother's expression hardened. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay family loyalty, by begrudging your own sister and nieces a roof over their heads. What exactly have you done for me? The words escaped before I could stop them, releasing years of pent-up frustration. I put myself through college. I built my career from nothing. I saved for this house for years. No one handed me anything. We raised you, my mother snapped. We supported your decision to move away for that job. We have always been there for you. Memories flashed through my mind, the pattern of my family, taking advantage of my success year after year. The time Bridget had borrowed money for a security deposit on an apartment, only for me to discover she had used it for a vacation instead. The Christmas when my mother had opened a credit card in my name to buy family gifts that went primarily to Bridget and her children. The countless times my achievements had been minimized, while Bridget's smallest efforts were celebrated. Our heated discussion was interrupted by a crash from the dining room. I rushed in to find Lily with a paintbrush in hand, having knocked over a container of watercolors onto my hardwood floor. She had apparently decided to paint a mural on my dining room wall. Lily, what are you doing? I exclaimed, grabbing paper towels to blot the spill before it could stain. Making it prettier, she replied, echoing her younger sister's earlier words. Mommy said we can decorate our new house however we want. My mother appeared behind me, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. She is just making it feel like home, Amanda. Children need to express themselves creatively. This is already someone's home, I said through gritted teeth. Mine. Returning to the kitchen, I overheard Bridget on her phone again, this time clearly speaking to the moving company. Yes, I will need storage for some of the larger furniture items, she was saying. My sister has plenty of space in her garage. The realization struck me like a physical blow. You have already sold furniture, assuming you could store things in my garage. Bridget at least had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Just a few things. The dining set, my bedroom furniture. Things that would not fit with your decor anyway. I felt a steadying hand on my arm and turned to find Rachel, concern evident in her expression. Amanda, do you need help with anything? She asked pointedly, her gaze flicking between me and my family members. Before I could respond, my mother stepped forward, her voice sharp. This is a family matter. We can handle our own affairs. Rachel stood her ground. I am just making sure Amanda is okay with these sudden changes to her living situation. It seems like quite a surprise. My daughter knows the importance of family, my mother replied coldly. unlike some people who only think of themselves. Family works both ways, Rachel countered. Respect goes in all directions. I felt a surge of gratitude for Rachel's support, but the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. My housewarming party, meant to be a celebration of my achievement, had devolved into a family confrontation with my professional colleagues as witnesses. In the living room, I found Bridget in tears, playing the victim for a small audience of remaining guests. "I just do not understand why she is being so difficult," she was saying. "It is not like she needs 5 bedrooms for herself. My girls deserve stability after everything they have been through with their fathers." My mother joined in adding fuel to the fire. "Amanda has always been the fortunate one. Good at school, good job, no children to support. If she wanted privacy, she could just buy another house. It is not like she cannot afford it." The last comment pushed me over the edge. Buy another house? I just spent $2 million on this one. A house I saved for, researched and purchased entirely on my own. A hush fell over the room at my outburst. In the awkward silence that followed, Bridget's phone rang. She answered it without hesitation, stepping away, but remaining within earshot. "Hi babe," she said sweetly. "Yes, I am at Amanda's now. The house is perfect, plenty of room for all of us, including you. The master bedroom has a walk-in closet you will love." I felt my jaw drop. Not only was Bridget planning to move herself and her 4 children into my home, but apparently her new boyfriend was part of the package deal as well. Just then, the doorbell rang. 2 of my neighbors had arrived with housewarming gifts, having been invited to stop by later in the evening for dessert. I greeted them mechanically, accepting their gifts while trying to maintain a facade of normalcy, despite the chaos unfolding around us. As I guided them toward the refreshments, I caught sight of Bridget in my living room, measuring the windows with a tape measure she had apparently brought with her. "These curtains will need to be replaced," she was saying to my mother. "They are not blackout, and Harper needs complete darkness to sleep through the night." Each new discovery about their plans pushed me closer to my breaking point. Years of suppressed resentment of being taken for granted, of having my boundaries ignored, welled up inside me. I had spent my entire adult life trying to be the responsible one, the successful one, the one who could be counted on in a crisis. And this was how my family repaid me, by treating my greatest achievement as if it were communal property to be divided up according to their needs and desires. The final straw came when I returned to my home office to find my mother and Bridget examining my desk and bookshelves with critical eyes. "This will all have to go, of course," my mother was saying. "The girls need a proper playroom, and all these electronics are not suitable. That glass desk is a hazard with children around." "We can convert the garage for Amanda's office stuff," Bridget suggested. "That way she can still work from home when she needs to, but it will be out of the way." As they continued planning the destruction of the space I had so carefully designed for my professional needs, something inside me snapped. The last thread of patience, of family obligation, of misplaced guilt finally broke. In that moment, I knew I needed to take back control of my home and my life, no matter how uncomfortable the confrontation might be. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, and walked purposefully to the center of my living room. The party had dwindled to about 20 guests, a mix of confused friends, uncomfortable colleagues, and my immediate family members who had created this disaster. "Could I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need everyone to gather in the living room for a moment." As people began to assemble, I excused myself briefly and went to my bedroom. From my nightstand drawer, I retrieved a folder containing several important documents. My hands trembled slightly, but my resolve was firm. This had gone far enough. When I returned to the living room, I found my mother standing at the center, one arm around Bridget's shoulders. She had apparently decided to take charge in my absence. "While we are all gathered," Dorothy announced to the remaining guests, "I think we should take a moment to celebrate not just Amanda's new home, but the fact that this beautiful house will soon be filled with the laughter and love of trees. Family. Bridget and her girls will bring so much life to these empty rooms." Bridget nodded enthusiastically. We are thinking of painting the living room, a warmer color, maybe a nice terracotta. And the kitchen island needs to be child-proofed, of course. The bathrooms will need some updating too. More storage for all our toiletries. I stepped forward, the folder clutched firmly in my hand. Before we go any further with these plans, I said calmly, there is something important I need to share with everyone. My mother frowned at the interruption, but I continued before she could object. 3 weeks ago, I received a call from a realtor friend who handles properties in Bridget's neighborhood. She mentioned that a house on Maple Street had just been listed for sale, a house that sounded very familiar. Bridget's smile faltered, slightly, confusion crossing her features. It seems, I continued, that someone had decided to sell their house rather suddenly. The listing agent mentioned that the owner was a single mother with 4 children who needed to move quickly due to financial difficulties. I opened the folder and removed the document on top. When I heard this description, I had a suspicion. You see, over the years I have learned that when my sister makes sudden financial decisions, they often result in phone calls asking for my help. So I decided to be proactive this time. My mother stepped forward, her expression darkening. Amanda, what have you done? Something I probably should have done years ago, I replied. I set up a meeting with the listing agent through my company's LLC. I made a competitive offer on the house through my business entity. The seller never knew who the buyer was. Bridget's face had gone pale. You cannot buy my house without telling me. Actually, I can. And I did. I held up the document in my hand. The offer was made through Westside Properties LLC. Your realtor told you it was the best offer on the table, so you accepted it. The deal closed 3 days ago. Stunned silence filled the room. My remaining guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly shocked by this unexpected turn of events. My father, who had remained on the periphery of the drama until now, moved closer, his expression unreadable. You paid fair market value, I continued, looking directly at Bridget. I did not take advantage of your situation. In fact, my offer was slightly above asking price to ensure it would be accepted. The money has already been transferred to your account. But why would you do this? Bridget demanded, her voice rising. Were you spying on me? I was protecting myself. I corrected her. And, as it turns out, that was the right decision. You were planning to sell your house and move your entire family into mine without even asking me. You were going to present me with a fait accompli, assuming I would have no choice but to accept. My mother attempted to intervene. This is completely underhanded. You deliberately deceived your sister. No more underhanded than planning to invade my home without my permission, I countered. The difference is that my solution actually helps everyone. I now own the house Bridget was planning to leave. As the owner, I can offer her a continued lease at a fair rate. I removed another document from my folder. I have already prepared a lease agreement. The rent is reasonable for the area, well within what Bridget can afford with her income. She and the children can stay exactly where they are in the home they already know, in their current school district with all their existing furniture. Bridget stared at me in disbelief. You expect me to rent my own house back from you? It is not your house anymore, I reminded her gently. You sold it, without consulting me about your plans to move into my home, I might add. But yes, I am offering you the opportunity to stay there as my tenant. My mother's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is unacceptable. You cannot treat family this way. Actually, I think Amanda is being incredibly generous, my father interjected unexpectedly. She has found a way to help Bridget stay in her home, rather than displacing her own life to accommodate poor planning on Bridget's part. Several of my friends nodded in agreement, and I caught Rachel's subtle thumbs up from across the room. The lease terms are straightforward, I continued, refusing to be derailed. Market rate rent with the first 2 months discounted to help with the transition. Standard clauses about maintenance and repairs with me as the landlord, covering major issues as legally required. All perfectly normal and fair. Bridget's expression had shifted from shock to anger. You have been planning this all along. You knew I was in financial trouble, and instead of helping me like a sister, should you took advantage? No, I created a solution that respects everyone's boundaries, I corrected. I am helping you keep your home. I am just not giving up mine in the process. My mother stepped between us, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. I did not raise you to be so cold and calculating, Amanda. Where is your sense of family loyalty? My loyalty has been demonstrated through years of financial support, I replied steadily. But loyalty should not require me to sacrifice my own home and happiness. There is a difference between helping family and being exploited by them. Bridget began to cry in earnest, now tears streaming down her face as she clutched at our mother's arm. She has trapped me. What am I supposed to do now? You have two perfectly good options, I said calmly. You can continue living in your current house as my tenant with very reasonable terms, or you can use the money from the sale to find another place that suits your needs. What you cannot do is move yourself and your 4 children into my home without my consent. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet. The remaining guests, witnessing a family drama none of them had expected to be part of. Even the children had stopped their activities, sensing the tension. This is ridiculous, my mother declared. Amanda, you need to fix this situation immediately. I met her gaze steadily. I already have. I am helping Bridget keep her home. I am just doing it on my terms, not yours. The silence that followed my declaration was absolute. For several long moments, no one seemed to know what to say. Bridget stood frozen. The lease agreement I had offered, still clutched in her hand, her expression, cycling rapidly between shock, anger, and disbelief. I cannot believe you would do this to your own sister, she finally said, her voice trembling. This is a new low, even for you. Purchasing a property as an investment and offering you favorable rental terms is hardly malicious, I replied. Would you prefer? I had let a stranger buy your house. Someone who might have evicted you immediately, or raised the rent beyond what you could afford. My response only seemed to infuriate her further. You should have just let me move in here. That would have been the decent thing to do as a sister. Without asking me first, without any discussion of boundaries, expenses, or duration, that is not reasonable, Bridget, and you know it. My mother made another attempt to intervene. There must be a way to undo this. Call your lawyer, reverse the sale. The sale is final, I said firmly. The documents have been filed, the money transferred. This is the reality we are now working with. As the implications of the situation began to sink, a curious shift occurred in the room. Several of my friends who had been watching the drama unfold with uncomfortable expressions now seemed quietly supportive of my position. My colleague Marcus gave me a subtle nod of approval, while Rachel had moved to stand symbolically at my side. Most surprising was the reaction of Zoe, Bridget's oldest daughter. She stepped away from her mother and siblings and moved to the center of the room. Mom, she said quietly, maybe we should listen to Aunt Amanda. It would be weird to leave our house anyway. I do not want to change schools again. Bridget turned to her daughter with an expression of betrayal. Zoe, whose side are you on? There should not be sides, Zoe replied, with a maturity beyond her 14 years. Aunt Amanda is offering to let us stay in our house. Is that not what matters? A few of the remaining guests began to discreetly gather their belongings, clearly feeling they had witnessed more family drama than they had bargained for. I made no move to stop them, understanding their discomfort. The situation became even more complicated when the front door opened and a man in his early 30s walked in without knocking. Hey babe, sorry I am late, he called to Bridget. Traffic was insane. Did you tell them our news yet? This, I presumed, was the boyfriend who had also been planning to move into my home without my knowledge or consent. He stopped short when he sensed the tension in the room, looking around in confusion. Jake, Bridget said, her voice strained, we need to talk outside. As they stepped onto the front porch, I found myself momentarily alone with my mother, who regarded me with cold disappointment. I always knew you were selfish, Amanda, but I never imagined you would stoop this low to prove a point. This is not about proving a point, I replied wearily. This is about setting healthy boundaries after years of having mine ignored. I want to help Bridget. I truly do. But I will not be ambushed in my own home and expected to upend my life without even being consulted. My father approached, having overheard our exchange. Dorothy, the girl has a point. Bridget should have discussed this with Amanda before making plans. Of course you would take her side, my mother snapped. You always encouraged her independence to the point of selfishness. I encouraged her to value herself, he corrected, something you might consider doing with both your daughters. My mother turned away, clearly unwilling to continue the conversation with him. Instead, she went to find Bridget outside, leaving me standing with my father in an unexpected moment of alliance. That was quite a chess move, he said with a hint of admiration. I had no idea you had it in you. Neither did I admitted. But I reached my breaking point. The party had effectively ended. Most guests had made their excuses and departed, leaving only a handful of close friends and family members. The catering staff was discreetly beginning to clean up, though the event had been scheduled to continue for another 2 hours. Bridget and Jake returned from their conversation, outside both looking subdued. My mother followed behind them, her expression grim, but somewhat resigned. Can we talk privately? Bridget asked, gesturing toward the kitchen. Just you and me. I nodded and followed her, relieved at the prospect of a rational conversation without our mother's interference. Once we were alone, Bridget leaned against the counter, suddenly looking exhausted. Why did you not just tell me you knew about the house sale? She asked. Would you have told me about your plan to move in here if I had? She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Probably not. Mom said it would be better to present it as a done deal, that you would feel too guilty to say no in front of everyone. And that does not strike you as manipulative? I asked quietly. Bridget sighed, running a hand through her hair. Look, I am in trouble, Amanda. Deeper than you know. I got behind on the mortgage payments months ago. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Why did you not come to me then, before things got so desperate? Because you always make me feel like a failure, she admitted. You have your perfect life, your perfect career, and now your perfect house. Do you know how hard it is to always be the screw-up sister? The honesty of her response caught me off guard. I do not think you are a failure, Bridget. I think you make impulsive decisions without considering the consequences. There is a difference. The lease, she said after a moment. Is it really fair? You are not going to suddenly jack up the rent or find some reason to evict us. The terms are more favorable than you would get from any other landlord, I assured her. The rent is below market rate, and there is a clause that gives you first right of refusal if I ever decide to sell. She studied my face, perhaps looking for signs of deception. And the alternative is what? Taking the money from the sale and finding somewhere new. That is an option too. The sale price was fair. You could use it as a down payment on something else, if you prefer. I am not trying to trap you, Bridget. I am trying to give you options that do not involve commandeering my home. For several long moments she said nothing, apparently processing her limited choices. Finally, she nodded slowly. I will need to read over the lease carefully, and I want my own lawyer to review it. Of course, I agreed. That is completely reasonable. A tentative truce established, we rejoined the others in the living room. The children had settled somewhat, the initial excitement of potentially moving into the mansion, having given way to fatigue as the evening wore on. Zoe caught my eye and gave me a small smile that suggested she understood more than her mother gave her credit for. My mother was still coldly angry but seemed to recognize that her plan had been thoroughly derailed. I suppose we should be going, she announced stiffly. It is getting late and the girls have school tomorrow. As they gathered their belongings, Bridget approached me one last time. I will call you tomorrow about the lease, she said quietly. And Amanda, I am sorry about hijacking your housewarming. It was wrong. The apology, however, grudging, was unexpected. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means a lot." After they left, only a small group of my closest friends remained, including Rachel, who immediately enveloped me in a supportive hug. "That was the most epic display of boundary setting I have ever witnessed," she said admiringly. "Are you okay?" The question made me realize I had been running on pure adrenaline for the past few hours. Now that the confrontation was over, I felt drained, but also strangely liberated. "I think I will be," I answered honestly, for the first time in a long time. My father and his wife offered to stay and help clean up, a gesture that touched me deeply. As we worked alongside the catering staff to restore order to my home, he spoke quietly. "You did the right thing, Amanda. It may not feel like it right now, but standing up for yourself was necessary. Your sister needs to learn there are consequences to her actions." By midnight, the house was once again clean and quiet. My remaining friends helped carry the last of the gift bags to my bedroom before saying their goodbyes. Rachel was the last to leave, giving me one final hug at the door. "Your home is beautiful," she said, "and it is yours. Never forget that you earned this." After locking the door behind her, I stood alone in my entryway, emotions washing over me in waves, relief that I had stood my ground, guilt that it had come to such a confrontation, sadness that my family relationships were so complicated. But beneath it all, a profound sense that something fundamental had changed tonight. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and held firm when they tried to cross it. I walked slowly through the quiet rooms of my home, turning off lights and straightening cushions that had been displaced during the party. In each space I could still hear echoes of Bridget and my mother planning how they would transform it, as if my preferences and needs were irrelevant. But now those plans would never materialize. This home remained mine, a sanctuary I had created for myself. As I prepared for bed, physically and emotionally exhausted from the day's events, I felt no triumph, no sense of having won against my sister. Instead, I experienced something quieter but more profound, the peace that comes from finally standing up for yourself after a lifetime of accommodation. 1 month after the disastrous housewarming party, I sat on my back patio watching the sunset reflect on the pool's surface. So much had changed in those 4 weeks, both in my circumstances and in my understanding of family dynamics. Bridget had ultimately accepted the lease agreement after having her lawyer review it. She and the girls remained in their home now, technically my investment property. The transition had not been entirely smooth, with several tense phone calls and one tearful confrontation before she fully accepted the new arrangement. But we had reached a workable solution that protected both her needs and my boundaries. Initially, I had struggled with guilt over my actions. Had I been too calculating, too cold in my approach? The doubts would creep in late at night, making me question whether I had irreparably damaged my relationship with my sister. But with time and reflection, I recognized that my response, while perhaps unorthodox, had been proportionate to years of boundary violations. The most surprising development had been the changes in Bridget herself. As part of our agreement, she had begun working with a financial counselor I had recommended through my company. The initial sessions had been rocky, with Bridget resistant to examining her spending habits and financial choices, but gradually she had started implementing some of the recommended changes. She had sold her luxury car for a more practical model, consolidated her credit card debt, and even set up a modest savings account for emergencies. My mother had maintained a chilly distance for the first 2 weeks, calling only to inform me that I had broken Bridget's heart and destroyed family trust. But even her rigid position had softened somewhat when she saw that my arrangement with Bridget was actually providing more stability than her original plan would have. She still made pointed comments about family loyalty during our infrequent calls, but the outright hostility had diminished. My relationship with my nieces had evolved in unexpected ways. Zoe, who had shown unexpected maturity during the confrontation, had begun reaching out to me directly. We had started a tradition of Sunday morning video calls, where we would discuss her schoolwork, her aspirations for college, and her observations about family dynamics. I saw in her a thoughtfulness and resilience that reminded me of myself at that age. Even the younger girls seemed to be adjusting to the new normal. When I visited their home rather than them invading mine, the interactions were more positive. Grace had proudly shown me her latest gymnastics medals. Lily had drawn me a picture that now hung on my refrigerator, and little Harper had climbed into my lap for a story, without leaving sticky fingerprints on my clothing. My home had become the sanctuary I had always intended it to be. I entertained friends regularly, hosted a small dinner party for colleagues, and even established a monthly book club gathering. Each of these events reinforced that this space was mine, to share on my terms with people who respected my boundaries. The professional impact had been positive as well. Standing firm in my personal life had translated into more confidence at work. I found myself speaking up more in executive meetings, pushing back on unreasonable deadlines, and advocating more effectively for my team. Several colleagues had commented on the change, including Rachel, who jokingly referred to me as the boundary boss in private conversations. Perhaps the most significant change had come in my conversation with Bridget 3 weeks after the housewarming. We had met for coffee at a neutral location, both of us nervous, but determined to find a way forward. "I have been thinking a lot about why I was so angry," she had admitted, staring into her cup. "And I realized it is because you broke the pattern. You were always the one who fixed everything, who sacrificed, so I did not have to face consequences. That pattern was not healthy for either of us," I had replied gently. "I know that now. And I cannot believe I was going to move into your house without even asking. Who does that?" "Someone who has been taught that her needs automatically outweigh others," I suggested. "We both learned unhealthy lessons growing up, Bridget. I learned that my value came from achievement and helping others, while you learned that being in crisis would get you attention and support." She had looked up at me then, with real recognition in her eyes. "Mom really did treat us differently, did not she? I always thought you were the favorite because you were successful, but now I see she expected you to be the responsible one, while I got to be the one who needed rescuing." That conversation had marked a turning point in our adult relationship. For the first time, we were seeing each other clearly, acknowledging the patterns that had shaped our interactions for decades. It did not instantly repair all the damage or erase the lingering resentments, but it created an opening for something healthier to develop. I had also established new traditions that honored these evolving relationships while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Sunday dinners at my house once a month gave us structured family time without the expectation of unlimited access to my space. I had set up a college fund for each of the girls, a more sustainable way to support their futures than the emergency bailouts that had characterized my financial relationship with Bridget in the past. My father had expressed quiet pride in my standing firm. During a recent lunch, he had confided that he regretted not helping me establish healthier boundaries earlier in life. "I saw what was happening," he admitted, "but it was easier to let your mother handle the girls while I focused on work. I should have intervened when the pattern became so unbalanced." As I reflected on these changes, watching the sky shift from gold to deep purple, I recognized that setting boundaries had not destroyed my family as I had feared. Instead, it had created space for more authentic connections to develop. The relationships were more complex now, less defined by rigid roles and expectations, but also more honest. I had come to understand that true family support did not mean sacrificing your own well-being whenever asked. It meant finding sustainable ways to help that respected everyone's autonomy and dignity. Sometimes love meant saying no, establishing limits, and allowing others to experience the natural consequences of their choices. My journey of setting boundaries had only just begun. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and new challenges to navigate. But I had found a strength in myself that I had not known existed, a willingness to stand firm, even when it was uncomfortable. That strength would serve me well in all my relationships going forward. As the last light faded from the sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. My home remained my sanctuary, a space I had created through years of hard work and determination. I had not set myself on fire to keep others warm, and in refusing to do so, I had actually created more light and warmth for everyone. The path forward would not always be easy, but it would be authentically mine, and that perhaps was the greatest achievement of all. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who expected too much from you? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating complex family dynamics and personal growth. Remember that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to establish your own boundaries when needed.